I'm Hazel Mitchell, 32, and I've always been invisible in my family. 3 months ago, I packed up and moved across town to a beautiful building in Riverside Heights. Not a single call, text, or how are you from any of my relatives. That stung, but confirmed what I'd always known. Then, yesterday, while mindlessly scrolling through Facebook, I saw it. Aunt Patricia's innocent post featuring my distinctive apartment building. Beautiful walk through Riverside Heights today. Suddenly, my phone exploded with notifications. After 3 months of silence, my entire family wanted to talk, but not for the reasons I expected. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most, and subscribe to join our community of survivors and thrivers. Now, let me tell you how my family's sudden interest changed everything. Growing up as the middle child in a family of 5 siblings was never easy. In the Mitchell household, excellence wasn't celebrated, it was expected. My parents, Richard and Catherine Mitchell, had a clear vision of success, and they made it obvious which of their children were meeting those expectations. My oldest brother Brian was the golden child, having followed our father's footsteps into medicine. By 35, he was already a prominent cardiothoracic surgeon, with publications in medical journals and regular speaking engagements at prestigious conferences. Every family gathering began with updates on Brian's latest surgical innovation or the important patient he'd saved. My sister Alicia was next in line, a corporate lawyer with a corner office at one of Boston's most prestigious firms. Her designer wardrobe and razor-sharp intelligence made her my mother's pride and joy. When Alicia spoke at dinner, everyone leaned in. Then there were the twins, Seth and Samuel, 4 years younger than me, but light years ahead in our parents' estimation. Tech entrepreneurs who had founded their startup right out of college, they were the dynamic duo who finished each other's sentences and our parents' retirement plans. And then there was me, Hazel, the middle child, the forgettable one. I'd chosen to pursue graphic design, a career path that elicited thinly veiled disappointment from my parents at every turn. Hazel's still doing her little drawings, my mother would tell relatives at family gatherings, as if I were a child with a hobby rather than a professional with clients. When are you going to get a real job with benefits? My father would ask, despite my repeated explanations about my freelance business model. The pattern of being forgotten was so consistent, it became predictable. At Thanksgiving 2 years ago, there were name cards for everyone except me. When my mother noticed, she quickly scribbled one and placed it at the kids' table, despite the fact that I was 30. "Oh, Hazel, I didn't realize you were coming," she said, though I'd RSVP'd to her email. On my 30th birthday, they scheduled Brian's surprise promotion party on the same day. When I mentioned it was also my birthday, my mother looked genuinely surprised. "Is it? Oh, I'm sure you don't mind sharing your day. Brian's accomplishment is such a milestone for the family." Even my achievements went unnoticed. When I won a regional design award, I brought the trophy to Sunday dinner, placing it on the coffee table during pre-dinner drinks. My father picked it up, examined it without reading the inscription, and set it aside to make room for Alicia's photos from her recent trip to the Amalfi Coast. "How was your week, Hazel?" my mother asked absently, her eyes still on Alicia's photos. I mentioned the award. She nodded and said, "That's nice, dear," before turning to ask Samuel about his latest investor meeting. But the breaking point came last Christmas. After 15 years as a vegetarian, a fact mentioned at every family dinner I'd attended since college, my mother served the holiday meal with no options I could eat. When I quietly mentioned it, she seemed genuinely startled. "Oh, I completely forgot. There's some salad in the fridge, I think." Later, as I picked at my improvised dinner of side dishes, I listened to my family discuss my financial situation as if I weren't there. "It's concerning," my father said. "At her age, she should have a proper investment portfolio." "Graphic design," my mother sighed. "I told her to study business like Alicia. Maybe she could do some designs for our new app," Samuel suggested. Not to me, but to Seth. "We wouldn't have to pay market rates since she's family." She'd probably appreciate the experience, Seth agreed, as if I weren't sitting 3 feet away, as if I hadn't been running my own successful business for years. That night, as I drove home to my small but comfortable apartment, I made a decision. I would move not far, just across town to a building I'd had my eye on for years. I'd saved carefully, and recently landed a major contract that made it possible. But I wouldn't tell anyone in my family. If they noticed, it would mean they paid at least minimal attention to my life. If they didn't, well, that would tell me something too. 3 months passed. I moved into my new place in Riverside Heights, a converted historic building with beautiful architectural details and a view of the river. I set up my home office, made friends with neighbors, settled into a new coffee shop routine. I didn't hide the move. I updated my address on social media, changed it on family birthday cards I sent. No one noticed. No one called to ask for my new address or to see how I was doing. 3 months of complete silence confirmed what I'd always suspected. In my family's eyes, I was completely invisible. It was a Sunday afternoon when everything changed. I was curled up on my window seat, the one with the perfect view of the river, working on a design project, and absently scrolling through Facebook during a creative block. That's when I saw Aunt Patricia's post. A beautifully framed photo of my apartment building with its distinctive red brick facade and wrought iron balconies, captioned simply, "Beautiful walk through Riverside Heights today. Love discovering new parts of the city." I smiled at the coincidence and left a comment. "That's my building. Wave next time you're walking by." I thought nothing more of it and returned to my work. 20 minutes later, my phone began buzzing with notifications. At first, I thought it must be a client emergency. Instead, I found myself staring at a barrage of messages from family members who hadn't bothered to contact me in 3 months. A text from my mother. "Hazel, call me immediately." A voicemail from my father. "Hazel, your mother and I need to speak with you about your living situation. Call us back." 3 missed calls from Brian, 2 from Alicia, and a joint text from the twins asking if I was free for coffee tomorrow. Even my second cousin Rachel, who I hadn't spoken to since my grandmother's funeral 2 years ago, had sent a Facebook message. "Oh my God, Hazel, heard about your amazing new place. We should catch up." For a brief, heartwarming moment, I thought they'd finally realized they'd been neglecting me. Perhaps seeing Aunt Patricia's post had made them recognize they hadn't been in touch since my move. Maybe they felt guilty and wanted to reconnect. That illusion shattered the moment I returned my mother's call. "Hazel, there you are. Why didn't you tell us you'd moved to Riverside Heights?" Her voice had that breathless quality it usually reserved for discussions of Brian's accomplishments. "I moved 3 months ago, Mom. I sent you my new address on the birthday card I mailed for your 60th. There was a pause. "Well, I don't recall that. But Riverside Heights, those apartments must cost a fortune. The Henderson's son has been trying to get in there for years." And there it was. Not concern for me, not interest in my life, but fascination with the perceived value of my address. "It's within my budget," I said carefully. "But how? Has something changed with your drawing business?" "Graphic design, Mom. And yes, I've been doing well." "Well enough to afford Riverside Heights? Those units start at $500,000, Hazel." I heard my father in the background. "Ask her if she's got a roommate, or a boyfriend we don't know about." My mother didn't bother to cover the receiver. "Richard wants to know if you're living with someone." "No, I live alone." "Then how on earth are you affording it? Those maintenance fees alone must be more than your old rent." I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. Once again, I was being cross-examined rather than conversed with. But this time, there was a new element. For the first time in my life, my family was impressed. Not by my work, not by my character, but by their perception of my financial status. "I've had some successful projects recently," I said vaguely. "Well, we're coming to see it. Your father and I can be there tomorrow afternoon." Before I could object, she continued. "And we're having a family dinner this weekend. Everyone's very excited to see your new place." After she hung up, The calls and texts continued. Brian wanted to know if I'd come into some money. Alicia asked if I'd met someone with resources. The twins were suddenly interested in my investment strategies. I sat in my beautiful apartment, the one I'd worked so hard for, the one that represented years of careful saving and professional growth, and felt a cold realization wash over me. My family hadn't suddenly started caring about me. They'd started caring about what they thought I had. My phone buzzed again. A text from Brian. Hey sis, excited to see the new digs. Also, perfect timing. I've been looking for investors in a new medical technology venture. We should talk. I set my phone down and looked around at my space. It was a lovely apartment, yes, but hardly the luxury penthouse they were imagining. I'd gotten a good deal on a foreclosure, spent months renovating it myself on weekends, and stretched to make it work because design was my passion and I wanted a space that inspired me. They didn't know me well enough to understand that. They didn't know me at all. As I sat there, a plan began to form in my mind. They wanted to believe I was suddenly wealthy? Fine. Maybe it was time to show my family exactly what they were to me and what I was to them. The decision came in a moment of clarity that felt almost serene. If my family was only interested in me now because they thought I had money, I would let them believe it. I would show them exactly who they were. I spent the night creating a believable backstory. I'd recently completed branding for a fitness app that had moderate success. What if I convinced my family I'd been a silent partner who received equity? That the app had been acquired by a larger company in a surprise buyout? It was plausible enough and would explain a sudden windfall without being too outlandish. The next morning, I called my client Jessica, who owned a high-end interior design firm and had become a friend. I explained my situation, and she laughed in disbelief. Your family ignored your move for 3 months, and now they're falling over themselves because they think you're rich? That's both hilarious and deeply messed up, she said. What do you need from me? Can I borrow some showcase pieces? The really expensive stuff you use for photo shoots? Just for a few days? By the time my parents arrived that afternoon, my apartment had transformed. Jessica's team had delivered a hand-knotted Persian rug worth more than my car, abstract art from a renowned local artist, and accent pieces that screamed quiet wealth. My IKEA bookcase was hidden behind a temporary wall, and my thrift store finds were safely in storage. The doorman, who I'd tipped generously and explained was participating in a surprise for my parents, greeted us with exaggerated deference. Miss Mitchell, always a pleasure. Your guests have arrived. My mother's eyes widened as she took in the marble lobby, the uniformed staff, the subtle indicators of luxury. By the time we reached my apartment, she was practically vibrating with excitement. Hazel, this is. She trailed off as I opened the door, revealing the transformed space. Do you like it? I asked, watching their expressions carefully. My father whistled as he walked through the apartment, examining everything with new eyes, not the proud eyes of a parent, but the calculating gaze of someone assessing value. That's original art, he noted, gesturing to the piece Jessica had lent me. Must have cost a pretty penny. I like supporting local artists, I said smoothly. My mother was taking photos with her phone. Wait until everyone sees this. Hazel, you should have told us. We've been so worried about you. The lie came easily. It happened fairly quickly. The app I designed branding for went through an acquisition. I had equity. Equity! My father perked up. How substantial? Substantial enough, I replied, deliberately vague. We always knew you'd find your way, my mother said, though we both knew that was untrue. I've always told everyone that Hazel has an artistic eye. I excused myself to make coffee, stepping into the kitchen and leaving the door slightly ajar. I could hear them whispering urgently, Richard, this changes everything. Do you have any idea what this place is worth? At least 7 figures, Catherine. And that art that's a Jameson piece. They start at 50,000. We need to talk to her about financial planning. She should really consider helping Brian with his new practice. It would be a solid investment, and you know he's been struggling with the startup costs. and the twins' new venture. Much better return than whatever she's doing with it now. She always was a bit naive about money. Remember that time she wanted to donate her entire summer job earnings to that animal shelter? I stood frozen, coffee forgotten, as they continued dissecting my imagined wealth and how it could benefit them. Not once did they express happiness for me. Not once did they mention pride in my accomplishments. It was all about what I could do for them now that I appeared to have resources. I returned with the coffee, maintaining a pleasant expression despite the burning in my chest. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," my mother said, accepting the cup. "And perfect timing, too. We've been thinking about scaling back. Your father's been considering early retirement." "Oh?" I kept my voice neutral. "And Brian's new specialized practice needs some startup capital," my father added. "Premium investment opportunity there." "I'll keep that in mind," I said. By the time they left, my mother had posted several photos of my apartment on Facebook with the caption, "So proud of our Hazel and her stunning new home. Proud parent success." I watched them from my window as they walked to their car, heads together in intense conversation. My hands were shaking, not with nervousness, but with a rage I'd never allowed myself to feel before. Years of invisibility, of dismissal, of conditional love based on achievements they valued, it all crystallized in that moment. They'd never bothered to see me, to know me, to value me for who I was. But now they saw dollar signs, and suddenly, I existed. I picked up my phone. 17 new notifications, relatives and family friends commenting on my mother's post, suddenly discovering my existence. I switched it off and sat in the silence of my apartment, planning my next move. The family dinner was scheduled for Saturday evening at the Harrington, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. I'd never been invited to a family gathering at such an upscale venue before. Previous reunions had been held at moderately priced chains or someone's home. The location alone spoke volumes about my family's new perception of me. "We thought we'd celebrate your success in style," my mother had said when arranging it. "Don't worry about the cost. You've worked hard for this." Translation: they expected me to pay. I arrived intentionally late, dressed in a designer outfit borrowed from Jessica's wardrobe for client meetings. The maitre d' led me to a private dining room where my entire family was already seated. My parents, all 4 siblings, their spouses, and even Aunt Patricia, who looked somewhat bewildered by the opulence. "There she is." My mother rose to embrace me, something she rarely did. Our woman of the hour. For the first time in my life, I was introduced first to my father's golf buddies, who happened to be dining at the restaurant. "This is my daughter Hazel, the entrepreneur," he said proudly, as if he'd been using that description for years instead of Hazel, who does something with computers and art. I settled into my seat, observing the dynamics around me. Brian sat to my right, unusually attentive. Alicia positioned herself directly across from me, her smile tight and calculating. The twins flanked my parents, periodically exchanging meaningful glances. "So, tell everyone about this app deal," my father prompted after the first round of drinks arrived. I recited my fabricated story, keeping details vague but impressive sounding. "The acquisition was unexpected. Right place, right time. Always knew you had it in you," Brian said, clapping my shoulder. This from the brother who once told me I should stick to realistic goals when I mentioned wanting to start my own design business. "We should celebrate with champagne," my mother suggested, signaling a waiter. "The Dom Perignon, I think." As the waiter left, Brian leaned in conspiratorially. "Actually, Hayes, your timing couldn't be better. I've been developing a revolutionary approach to minimally invasive cardiac procedures. The technology is patented, but I need capital to launch the specialized practice. Premium equipment, specialized staff. It's a significant investment, but the returns will be substantial." "How substantial?" I asked, mimicking my father's evaluative tone. "Triple your investment within 5 years," he said confidently. "I've got projections I can show you. Say, 2 million to start?" I nearly choked on my water. 2 million? "It's a ground floor opportunity," he continued smoothly. "Family only. I'd offer equity, of course. Before I could respond, Alicia jumped in from across the table. Speaking of investments, Mark and I have had a bit of a setback. Mark, her husband, studied his plate intently. His firm downsized last month. Completely unexpected. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely concerned despite everything. Are you both okay? We'll manage, she said with a brave smile that didn't reach her eyes. The timing is awkward with the mortgage on the new lake house, but we'll figure it out. She paused meaningfully. Unless you're looking to diversify your portfolio, real estate in the Berkshires is always a solid investment. I nodded noncommittally, and Samuel seized the opening. If you're considering real estate, Hazel, Seth and I have something much more exciting. We're developing a blockchain-based property investment platform. Revolutionary stuff. We're raising our Series A funding now, Seth added, looking for angel investors who understand innovation. Someone like you. Someone like me, I repeated softly. Throughout the entire meal, it continued, each family member finding ways to suggest how my newfound wealth could benefit them. My parents spoke about their retirement dreams, heavily hinting that their portfolio needed just a little boost to make it happen. Brian's wife mentioned their children's private school tuition. Alicia's husband awkwardly brought up a timeshare opportunity. Not once did anyone ask how I was feeling about my own success. Not once did anyone express interest in my work, my dreams, my plans. I was still invisible, only my imagined money was visible to them. The only exception was Aunt Patricia, who sat quietly observing the feeding frenzy with increasing discomfort. During a brief lull, when the twins were showing my parents their business plan on a tablet, she leaned over to me. "Are you okay, Hazel?" she asked quietly. "This all seems very sudden." I looked at her, really looked, and saw genuine concern in her eyes. "I'm managing," I said carefully. "You know, I've always admired how you've charted your own course," she continued. "Success isn't just about money, it's about being true to yourself." Before I could respond, the waiter arrived with the check. He placed it discreetly in the center of the table, but no one reached for it. Instead, 8 pairs of eyes turned expectantly toward me. "Well," my father said with a chuckle, "I think it's only fitting that the guest of honor treat us tonight. A small celebration of your big success." I picked up the leather folder and glanced at the total. $2,347.82. "Of course," I said, sliding my credit card inside. "My pleasure." As we said our goodbyes outside the restaurant, each family member made plans to connect with me soon about their opportunities. My mother hugged me tightly and whispered, "We're so proud to have you back in the family fold, Hazel." Back in the family fold. As if I had been the one who left. As if I hadn't been there all along, waiting to be seen. In the taxi home, I finally let the tears come. Not tears of sadness, but of anger, of clarity, of resolve. They had shown me exactly who they were and what I meant to them. Now it was time to show them who I had become. The next morning, I called Natalie, my best friend since college and the only person besides Jessica who knew the truth about my situation. Unlike my family, Natalie had helped me move, had celebrated my legitimate professional successes, had been there through every up and down. "They're vultures," she declared after I recounted the dinner. "I can't believe they're hitting you up for millions when they haven't bothered to call you in 3 months. I knew they were self-centered. But this is beyond what even I expected," I admitted, pacing my living room. "Brian asked for $2 million. $2 million! As if I just had that sitting around. So what are you going to do? Tell them the truth?" I hesitated. "I've been thinking about that all night. If I just tell them I'm not actually rich, they'll go back to ignoring me. They won't learn anything. What's the alternative? Keep pretending? No. Well, yes, but with a purpose." The plan that had been forming in my mind since dinner suddenly crystallized. "I'm going to expose their hypocrisy, show them exactly who they are." "How?" Natalie sounded both concerned and intrigued. "I'm going to create an investment opportunity. For family only. Hazel. Nothing illegal," I assured her. "Just a social experiment." I'm going to see just how far they're willing to go to get money from me. The plan came together quickly. Using my design skills, I created a professional prospectus for Green Life Housing Development, a fictional, eco-friendly residential community. I built financial projections showing impressive returns, created architectural renderings, and even developed a comprehensive website with password protection for family investors only. The concept was simple but appealing: sustainable luxury housing with guaranteed early returns and exclusive investment opportunities for founding partners. It was vague enough to be believable but specific enough to seem legitimate. "This is impressive," Natalie admitted, reviewing my work. "If I didn't know better, I'd invest myself." "It needs to be convincing. But I'm not actually taking any money," I emphasized. "I just want to see how far they'll go, how quickly they'll commit funds they can't afford based on their trust in a family member they barely know." I sent out formal invitations to a family investment meeting at my apartment the following weekend. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. My father called to confirm they'd attend and mentioned he was bringing his financial advisor. Brian texted that he'd adjusted his surgery schedule to make it. The twins asked if they could present some synergy opportunities between Green Life and their own venture. As the week progressed, I became increasingly aware of the behind-the-scenes conversations happening without me. Aunt Patricia called on Wednesday, her voice concerned. "Hazel, I wanted you to know that there's been a lot of talk in the family about your investment opportunity," she said carefully. "Oh? What kind of talk?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Richard, your father has been telling everyone this is a guaranteed return. He and your mother are discussing taking early retirement based on the projected earnings." I felt a twinge of unease. "I haven't even presented the details yet." "I know, but there's more." She paused. "I overheard Brian on the phone with someone. He mentioned using funds from your investment to cover some significant debts. Gambling debts, Hazel." The unease deepened. "Gambling? Brian?" "Apparently it's been going on for years. Catherine and Richard have bailed him out several times, but it's gotten worse. He's telling his creditors that he'll have the money soon, thanks to his wealthy sister." After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. What had started as a lesson in visibility was revealing darker truths than I'd anticipated. My brother had a gambling addiction severe enough to make him desperate for my money. My parents were planning their retirement around my fictional success. I considered calling the whole thing off. Then my phone pinged with an email from my mother, forwarded to the entire family. "Just a reminder about our breakfast club on Thursday. Also, exciting news: our Hazel is hosting an exclusive investment opportunity this weekend. Richard and I are so proud that she's including family first in this venture. As Hazel says, family takes care of family. We'll be bringing our financial advisor John to help structure our contribution." I had never said those words. I had never suggested this was a guaranteed return. Yet here was my mother, attributing statements to me I'd never made, creating expectations I'd never set. The next day, I discovered through social media that Alicia had already put a down payment on a vacation home, expecting my investment to cover the remaining balance. The twins had told their business partners they had family funding secured. The trap I'd set to expose their greed was revealing something far more dangerous. My family was willing to risk their financial security based on nothing more than assumptions about my wealth and a vague investment opportunity they knew nothing about. I called Natalie again, troubled. "This is getting out of hand. They're making financial commitments based on money they don't have." "Then stop it," she said simply. "Tell them the truth now, before they do something really stupid." "I will," I promised. "After the meeting. I need them to see it, to really see what they've become." But even as I said the words, a part of me wondered if I had crossed a line, if my desire to be seen had transformed into something darker. Saturday arrived, and with it came my family, dressed in their financial best. My father wore his important meeting suit, the one normally reserved for his highest value clients. My mother had her hair freshly done and carried a designer bag I'd never seen before. Brian arrived with his wife and a man he introduced as his personal financial advisor. Alicia and her husband came with a portfolio of their own, as did the twins. Even extended family members I rarely saw had requested to attend. Jessica had once again transformed my apartment, this time into what looked like a sleek corporate meeting space. Professional signage for Green Life housing adorned the walls, and bound prospectuses sat at each place around my dining table, which had been swapped for a conference table for the occasion. "Quite the operation you have here," my father noted approvingly, as he accepted a glass of champagne from the catering staff friends of Jessica's who had agreed to play the part for the afternoon. "Very professional." "I believe in doing things properly," I replied, guiding him to his seat. Once everyone was settled, I began my presentation, using the skills I'd developed pitching to design clients over the years. I outlined the fictional Green Life housing concept: sustainable luxury living spaces with community gardens, renewable energy, and exclusive amenities. I presented projected returns of 25% in the first year, 40% by year 3. "These numbers are exceptional," Brian's financial advisor noted, though I caught a flicker of skepticism in his eyes. "What's driving such high returns in a typically moderate growth sector?" I had anticipated this question and prepared a suitably vague but impressive-sounding response about proprietary construction methodologies and tax incentive structures. I emphasized that this was a ground-floor opportunity available only to family members in this initial phase. "We want to keep the early returns in the family," I said, echoing the language my parents had always used when discussing opportunities they shared with my more successful siblings, but never with me. The presentation continued for 45 minutes, during which I could see the skepticism in the financial advisor's eyes gradually giving way to the infectious enthusiasm of my family. By the time I opened the floor for questions, my relatives were practically vibrating with excitement. "What's the minimum investment?" my father asked immediately. "For founding partners, we're looking at $250,000, I replied smoothly. "But there's flexibility for family." There was a momentary pause as they absorbed the figure, but it didn't dampen their enthusiasm for long. "And the maximum?" Brian asked, leaning forward. "For this phase? $5 million per investor." My mother beamed proudly, as if I'd just announced I'd cured cancer. "Isn't this exciting? Our Hazel, the entrepreneur." The questions continued, mostly focused on returns, timeline, and how quickly they could commit funds. Not one person asked about the actual housing project itself, the supposed social impact, environmental benefits, or architectural details I'd spent hours fabricating. They cared only about the money they thought they would make. As the formal presentation concluded and everyone broke into smaller conversations, I excused myself to get more champagne from the kitchen. There, I found Brian on his phone, speaking in hushed tones. "Yes, I told you I'd have it. By next weekend at the latest," he was saying tensely. "The investment is solid. My sister is loaded. No, there's no risk." "Yes, I'm sure. I've seen her place. Seen the proposal. I said I'll have your money, damn it." He ended the call abruptly when he noticed me in the doorway. "Hazel, great presentation. Really impressive." "Everything okay?" I asked, gesturing to his phone. "Fine, fine. Just some colleagues excited about a side venture." His smile was tight, forced. "Listen, I've been thinking. I could go to 500,000 as a show of confidence." I studied my brother, the golden child, the successful surgeon who had always looked at me with a mixture of pity and dismissal. Now he was looking at me with something like desperation. "That's a significant amount, Brian. Are you sure?" "Absolutely. Family opportunity, right?" He laughed too loudly. "I can liquidate some assets, no problem." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "I appreciate your confidence." Returning to the living room, I nearly collided with Alicia coming out of my bathroom, looking flustered. "Sorry, just needed to freshen up," she said, smoothing her skirt. But I noticed her purse was open, and as she hurried back to the group, I slipped into the bathroom. My suspicion was confirmed when I found my medicine cabinet slightly ajar. Had she been looking for drugs? Evidence of some kind? I wasn't sure, but the invasion of privacy stung even through my growing numbness to their behavior. Worse was what I discovered when I picked up my mother's phone, accidentally left on the bathroom counter. A text notification lit up the screen from my father. "She's totally buying it. Thinks we're here for her little project. Once we get our share of the money, we can finally fix the retirement fund disaster." Another betrayal. They weren't just here for my money, they were actively deceiving me while I was deceiving them. The layers of manipulation made me feel physically ill. When I returned to the group, investment paperwork was being reviewed. Family members were discussing contribution amounts that made my heart sink. My parents, $250,000 from their retirement fund. Brian, $500,000, which I now knew was meant to cover gambling debts. Alicia and Mark, $150,000 from a second mortgage on their house. The twins, $100,000 each from business loans secured against their company. These weren't wealthy people throwing around disposable income. These were middle and upper middle class family members risking their financial security based on nothing more than their perception of my success and their own greed. "We'll need to finalize commitments by next Friday," I found myself saying, sticking to the script I'd created but feeling increasingly uneasy. "The opportunity closes then." As the event wound down, family members approached me one by one with signed intent forms indicating their planned investment amounts. Brian pressed me for an early distribution option. The twins suggested combining our ventures for maximized returns. My father proudly told me he'd already informed his golf club friends about his daughter's financial expertise. When only Aunt Patricia remained, she fixed me with a thoughtful look. "You don't seem very happy for someone who just secured over $1 million in investments from family," she observed quietly. I couldn't maintain the facade with her. "It's complicated." She studied me for a long moment. "You know, your mother called me last week to borrow money for a new outfit for today. Said she needed to look the part for your investors meeting." "She what?" "They're not as financially secure as they pretend to be, Hazel. None of them are," she sighed. "Your father made some poor investments a few years back. They remortgaged their house to help Brian with his temporary cash flow issue. And Alicia's husband was laid off 6 months ago, not last month." I felt the blood drain from my face. "How do you know all this?" "I'm the family fixer," she said with a sad smile. "The one they call when they need money but don't want anyone else to know. I've been helping them for years. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because whatever game you're playing, and I know you're playing one, Hazel, it could have real consequences. These people are desperate, more desperate than you know." As she left, her warning echoed in my mind. What had started as a lesson in visibility, in forcing my family to see their own hypocrisy, had evolved into something with potentially devastating real-world consequences. I looked around my empty apartment, at the fake corporate signage and investment prospectuses, and wondered if I had become just as manipulative as the family I was trying to teach a lesson. The week following the investment meeting brought a cascade of disturbing developments. Family members who had been strangers for years were suddenly constant presences in my life, calling daily with updates on their investment preparations. My parents had submitted documentation for a $250,000 withdrawal from their retirement accounts, incurring substantial penalties in the process. Brian had secured $400,000, significantly more than he'd initially proposed, mostly from high-interest loans from what sounded increasingly like dangerous creditors. Alicia and her husband had taken a second mortgage on their home for $150,000, while the twins had leveraged their business for $100,000 each. All told, my family was preparing to hand over more than $1 million based on nothing but their perception of my wealth and a vague investment proposal. The reality of this hit me like a physical blow each time my phone rang with another update about liquidated assets or signed loan documents. I had planned to reveal everything at the final signing meeting scheduled for the following weekend. My intention had been to expose their greed and conditional interest in my life, not to cause genuine financial hardship. But as the stakes escalated, I began to worry that the lesson would come at too high a price. Then came the anonymous tip. Natalie called me on Wednesday, her voice tight with concern. Hazel, something's happened. I think we need to shut this down now. What is it? I may have done something. She paused. I created a fake social media account and sent a message to your mom suggesting I'd seen you having lunch with Elliot Warner. Who's Elliot Warner? A tech billionaire. I figured it would light a fire under them, make them show their true colors even more clearly before you reveal everything. I groaned. Natalie, why would you? I know. I thought it would help make your point. But Hazel, your mother posted about it. It's everywhere now. Your whole extended family thinks you're dating a billionaire. I checked my social media and found dozens of notifications. My mother had indeed posted a deliberately vague status. So proud of Hazel's new relationship. Sometimes the right connections change everything. Power couple, blessed. The comments were a flood of congratulations and thinly veiled requests for introductions, jobs, and investments. The family grapevine had transformed a fabricated lunch into a serious relationship with merger potential. My phone had been on silent during my client meeting. When I checked it, I found 17 missed calls and over 30 text messages, all from family members. The most concerning was from Brian. Just gave creditors your name as guarantor for final payment. They're thrilled about Warner Connection. Need to finalize green life as soon as possible to meet payment deadline. My blood ran cold. Natalie, this has gone too far. Brian is involving creditors that sound more like loan sharks. You need to tell them the truth. Now. I know. I took a deep breath. I'll call a family meeting for tomorrow evening. End this before it gets worse. But when I called my mother to arrange the meeting, she was already 3 steps ahead, deep in a fantasy world of my creation. Darling, we've been trying to reach you all day. We've had a family conference call and made some decisions. Her voice was breathless with excitement. We're increasing our investment. Your father and I are selling the house. You're what? I nearly dropped the phone. It's the perfect time to downsize anyway. With the proceeds plus our retirement funds, we can commit $1 million to Green Life. It just makes sense. Mom, no that's. And Brian has secured additional funding. He's so excited about being part of this. He said his creditors are completely on board with the extended timeline now that they know about your connections. My carefully constructed lesson was spiraling out of control. Mom, we need to talk. There are things about this investment you don't understand. Oh, we understand more than you think, sweetheart. Elliot Warner, why didn't you tell us? Though I suppose these things are delicate in the early stages. Mom, listen to me. I'm not dating Elliot Warner. That was a misunderstanding. And about Green Life. Don't worry. We're being discreet. Just family and close friends know. We're getting together tomorrow to finalize everything. Brian's creditors want to meet you, but we told them that's not how these things work. Brian's creditors want to meet me? Alarm bells rang in my head. Just a formality, dear. We assured them everything's proceeding according to plan. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. This had moved beyond teaching my family a lesson about their conditional affection. They were making catastrophic financial decisions that could ruin them and potentially put me in danger if Brian's creditors were as shady as they sounded. I called Natalie back. It's worse than we thought. My parents are selling their house. Brian has apparently used my name with his creditors. Oh my God, Hazel, this is criminal, I finished. If I take money from them based on fraudulent claims, it's criminal. You need to stop this now. I'm trying, but they won't listen. They're so caught up in their fantasy of my success that they can't hear me. That evening, I drove to my parents' house, the home they were planning to sell to invest in my fictional project. I needed to make them understand, face to face, that they needed to reconsider. I found them at the dining room table with a real estate agent, signing listing documents. Hazel, my mother looked up in surprise. We weren't expecting you. Come meet Sandra. She's helping us list the house. Mom, Dad, we need to talk. In private. The real estate agent politely excused herself to make a call outside. "What's going on?" my father asked once we were alone. "You need to reconsider this investment," I said firmly. "All of you do. It's too much money, too quickly." My mother laughed lightly. "Don't be silly, darling. We know what we're doing." "No, you don't. This is your home. You've lived here for 30 years. And we've built up tremendous equity," my father replied. "Equity that will work much harder for us in green life. At our age, it's about maximizing returns in the time we have left. But there are risks you don't understand." "Honey," my mother said condescendingly, "we may not be tech billionaires like your new friend, but we understand investment basics. We've discussed this as a family. We've made our decision." "As a family," I repeated. "You mean you've discussed my money and how you can get it?" "Not once in the past month has anyone asked me how I'm doing, what my goals are, whether I'm happy. It's all been about what I can do for you." A flicker of discomfort crossed my father's face. "That's not fair, Hazel. We've always supported you." "Have you?" I challenged. "When was the last time either of you came to one of my design showcases? Or remembered my birthday without a Facebook reminder? Or asked about my life without an ulterior motive?" My mother's expression hardened. "I don't know what's gotten into you. If you're having second thoughts about the investment structure, we can discuss that. But there's no need for this." Emotional outburst. I realized with a sinking heart that they still weren't seeing me, they were seeing dollar signs. Even my attempt to warn them was being interpreted through the lens of their greed. "Just promise me you won't finalize anything until after our family meeting this weekend," I said finally. "Of course not, dear." My mother's tone was patronizing. "Everything will be formalized on Saturday. We wouldn't dream of proceeding without you." As I left, my phone buzzed with a text from Brian. "Critical situation. Creditors not happy with delay. Need to meet tomorrow or there will be problems." Serious problems. The trap I had set had turned into a cage, and we were all caught in it. The final family dinner was set for Friday evening at Castello's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I had chosen it specifically because it was public enough to prevent any extreme reactions when I finally revealed the truth, but private enough for the uncomfortable conversation we needed to have. I arrived early and requested a secluded corner table, my stomach in knots. The weight of what I was about to do, exposing not just my family's conditional love, but my own deception, felt crushing. I had started this as a lesson, but it had morphed into something that threatened real financial and possibly physical harm. As I waited, checking my phone nervously, a text came through from Alicia. "Running a bit late. Had to sign final mortgage papers. So excited." My heart sank. Despite my warnings, my sister had gone ahead with the second mortgage. Before I could respond, another message appeared, this one from my father. "Great news. House listing went live today. Already have 2 showing requests. Realtor thinks we could close within 30 days. They had accelerated their plans, not delayed them as I'd asked. With growing horror, I realized they were afraid I might back out of the opportunity, so they were rushing to commit themselves before I could change my mind. The first to arrive was Aunt Patricia, her expression grave. "Hazel, I've been trying to reach you. Things are spiraling out of control." "I know. I'm ending it tonight. Telling them everything." She glanced around to ensure we weren't overheard. "It may be too late. Brian's in serious trouble. The people he owes money to, they're dangerous. He's told them they'll be paid by Monday from his investment returns." "That's impossible. There is no investment." "I know that. You know that. But Brian's convinced them otherwise. He's been showing them photos of you and your apartment, the Green Life materials, even fabricated text messages between you and Elliot Warner." I felt physically ill. Why would he do that? Because he's desperate. His gambling debts are over $500,000. He's been borrowing from one dangerous group to pay another for years. Now he's promised them all he'll make good on Monday. Before I could respond, my parents arrived, followed closely by the twins, and then Alicia with her husband. Only Brian was missing. "Where's Brian?" I asked as everyone settled in. He said he'd be a bit late, my mother replied. Some patient emergency. But he said to start without him. I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment to end the charade before anyone took more irreversible steps. But before I could speak, my father raised his glass. A toast, he announced. To Hazel, who has brought this family an extraordinary opportunity, and to new beginnings for all of us. Glasses clinked around the table. My mother beamed at me with more pride than she'd shown in my entire life. The twins were already discussing how they would expand their business with their investment returns. Alicia and her husband were talking about the vacation home they'd put a deposit on that morning. Actually, I interrupted, setting down my untouched wine, I need to tell you all something important. Just then, Brian burst into the restaurant, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled, his eyes wild with panic. He rushed to our table and grabbed my arm. We need to talk, he hissed. Now. Brian, I was just about to. Now, Hazel. His fingers dug painfully into my arm as he pulled me toward the restaurant's vestibule. Once we were alone, he rounded on me. Where is the money? What money? Don't play stupid. The investment funds. The first round was supposed to be transferred today. My guys are waiting. Your guys? I repeated, though I knew exactly who he meant. The investors I owe. I told them today was the day. His voice cracked with desperation. They're not patient people, Hazel. Brian, listen to me. There is no investment. There never was. He stared at me blankly. What are you talking about? Green life doesn't exist. It was a test, a lesson, to see if any of you actually cared about me or just what you thought I could give you. His face drained of color. You're lying. I'm not. I made it all up. The app buyout, the wealth, the investment opportunity, all of it. But your apartment, the presentation, Elliot Warner. I borrowed the apartment furnishings from a design client. The presentation was fake. I've never met Elliot Warner. Brian's expression transformed from disbelief to rage. He slammed his fist against the wall, causing nearby diners to turn in alarm. Do you have any idea what you've done? He snarled. These people will kill me. I tried to warn you all. I shot back. I tried to tell you to reconsider, to wait, but none of you would listen. You were all too busy planning how to spend money that wasn't even real. By now, the commotion had drawn attention. My father appeared in the vestibule, followed closely by my mother and the others. What's going on? My father demanded. Brian pointed at me accusingly. Tell them what you just told me. All eyes turned to me. In that moment, I felt a strange calm descend. The moment of truth had arrived, literally and figuratively. There is no investment, I said clearly. Green Life Housing doesn't exist. I'm not wealthy. I've never met Elliot Warner. It was all a test to see if any of you actually cared about me. Stunned silence fell over the group. My mother was the first to recover. What do you mean, a test? Why would you do such a thing? Because none of you noticed when I moved 3 months ago. None of you called, or visited, or showed any interest in my life until you thought I had money. Then suddenly, I existed again. That's not true, my father began, but Alicia cut him off. What about the apartment? The fancy furnishings? The investment prospectus? Borrowed. Created. Fake. I met each pair of eyes in turn. I wanted to see if you valued me, or just what you thought I could give you. You've answered that question pretty clearly. The stunned silence gave way to chaos. Brian lunged at me, his face contorted with rage, only to be restrained by the twins. My mother collapsed into a chair, her hand over her mouth. My father's face turned an alarming shade of purple. Do you have any idea what you've done? He roared. We've sold our house. I told you to wait, I reminded him. I specifically asked you not to make any financial decisions until after tonight. We've taken out loans, Alicia cried. Put deposits down. We've leveraged our business, Samuel added. I've borrowed from people who will break my legs or worse if I don't pay them back on Monday, Brian shouted. The restaurant manager appeared, alerted by the commotion. Is everything all right here? No, my mother said shakily. No, everything is not all right. The manager asked us to take our family discussion elsewhere. In stunned silence, we gathered our things and moved to the parking lot. There, under the harsh fluorescent lights, my family fell apart. "You're no daughter of mine," my father spat. "No child of mine would do something so cruel, so calculating." "Cruel?" I echoed in disbelief. "I spent my entire life being invisible to all of you. The moment you thought I had money, suddenly I mattered. That's what's cruel." "We could lose everything because of your little lesson," Alicia said, tears streaming down her face. "Our home, our savings. And whose fault is that? I didn't ask you to take out second mortgages or sell houses or borrow from loan sharks. That was your choice, a choice you made not out of love for me, but out of greed." "Get out of my sight," my father said, his voice trembling with rage. "You're dead to us." My mother wouldn't even look at me. The twins stood protectively around Brian, who was on his phone, frantically trying to reach his creditors. Alicia sobbed against her husband's shoulder. Only Aunt Patricia remained by my side. "This has gone far enough," she said firmly. "Everyone, go home, cool down. We'll figure this out tomorrow when heads are clearer." One by one, my family members departed, leaving me alone with Patricia in the empty parking lot. The weight of what had just happened, the complete implosion of my family, hit me with physical force. "They'll never forgive me," I whispered. "Maybe not," Patricia agreed. "But Hazel, could you have forgiven them for only loving you when they thought you had something to give them?" I had no answer for that. As I drove home alone, my phone buzzed constantly with messages, threats from Brian, recriminations from my parents, desperate pleas from Alicia. I turned it off and focused on the road ahead, illuminated only by my headlights and the occasional street lamp. I had wanted to be seen, to be valued for who I was rather than what I could provide. Instead, I had destroyed the illusion of family I had clung to all these years. I had wanted visibility, but now I was truly alone. 3 months passed. Winter gave way to spring, and the cherry blossoms along the river outside my apartment bloomed and fell, marking the passage of time with quiet beauty. In those months, I learned what true invisibility felt like. The initial aftermath was brutal. Brian's creditors, furious at being misled, gave him a warning that put him in the hospital with 2 broken ribs and a fractured wrist. He filed assault charges but wouldn't cooperate with police to name his attackers, instead directing all his rage toward me. His attorney sent threatening letters, promising to sue me for fraud, emotional distress, and personal injury, though the threats eventually petered out when they realized I had no assets worth taking. My parents completed the sale of their house, using the proceeds to help Brian with his debts and to purchase a smaller condo outside the city. They changed their phone numbers and email addresses. My mother blocked me on social media. My father instructed his secretary to hang up if I called his office. For all intents and purposes, I ceased to exist in their world. Alicia lost the deposit on the vacation home, but managed to cancel the second mortgage before it was finalized. She sent me a single text. "I hope your point was worth destroying our family," and then she, too, disappeared from my life. The twins were more pragmatic. After the initial shock and anger, they calculated their losses, determined they could recover, and moved on. They sent a joint email acknowledging that while my methods were extremely questionable, they understood the underlying message. "We were crappy brothers," they wrote. "That's on us." Through it all, 2 pillars remained constant: Aunt Patricia and Natalie. Patricia, disgusted by the family's reaction, sold her own home and bought a unit in my apartment building. "I'm too old to maintain that big house anyway," she insisted when I expressed concern. "And someone needs to keep an eye on you." Her presence became my salvation. She brought casseroles when I couldn't bring myself to cook, sat with me through tearful nights questioning my decisions, and never once suggested that I was solely to blame for what had happened. "Relationships are systems," she told me one evening as we shared tea on my balcony. "Your behavior was a response to years of emotional neglect. Their behavior was a response to their own insecurities and values. No one person destroys a family single-handedly. Patricia also revealed family secrets that put much of my childhood in context. My parents' preference for my siblings hadn't begun with my career choice, it had been present from the beginning, rooted in their own complex history and values. My college fund, which I'd always been told was modest compared to my siblings because of market fluctuations, had actually been spent on Brian's medical school when he ran into financial trouble. They've always solved problems by taking from those they perceive as having less need and giving to those they perceive as having more potential, Patricia explained. It wasn't personal, it was their distorted way of maximizing family resources. Understanding didn't erase the pain, but it helped make sense of it. Natalie remained my steadfast friend, despite her role in escalating the situation with the Elliot Warner rumor. "I'll never forgive myself for pouring gasoline on that fire," she said. But she showed up consistently, helping me rebuild my design business when I struggled to focus on work, introducing me to new clients when word of my investment scandal made some existing ones nervous. Gradually, I began to build a life centered on genuine connections rather than blood ties. I joined a weekly dinner group with other creative professionals in my building. I volunteered at a community garden on Saturdays. I started therapy, working through the complex grief of losing my family while acknowledging my own role in what had happened. "You can regret your methods without invalidating your feelings," my therapist reminded me regularly. Both things can be true at once. 4 months after the restaurant confrontation, I received an unexpected email from the twins. They were launching a new venture and wanted to hire me to design the branding. "No family discount expected," they wrote. "Just straight business. Your work is legitimately good, and we should have recognized that years ago." It wasn't an apology, exactly, but it was an acknowledgement of my professional worth, something they'd never offered before. I accepted the project, and our working relationship slowly evolved into a cautious reconnection. We kept our interactions professional but friendly, carefully avoiding mention of the rest of the family. 5 months in, Alicia reached out. She'd started therapy herself and wanted to meet for coffee. Our first encounter was awkward and tense, but subsequent meetings gradually softened into something resembling sisterhood. "I was jealous of you," she admitted during our fourth coffee date. "You seemed so comfortable with your choices, so clear about who you were." "I've been miserable in corporate law for years, but it was what Mom and Dad expected." "I never knew that," I said, genuinely surprised. "I always thought you had the perfect life." She laughed bitterly. "Perfect on paper, empty in reality." She stirred her latte thoughtfully. "I'm considering a career change, something with more meaning, less status. Mark is supportive." My parents maintained their silence. Occasionally, Patricia would share carefully edited updates about their lives, but direct contact remained non-existent. The loss ached like a phantom limb present even in its absence. Brian was the most complicated case. His gambling addiction, exposed by my deception, could no longer be hidden or denied. After hitting what he described in a brief email as rock bottom, he entered a treatment program. 6 months after our family implosion, he sent a formal letter, not an apology, but an acknowledgement as part of his 12-step program. I recognized that I used our familial relationship to attempt to secure funds to support my addiction. While I cannot separate my anger about your methods from the harm they caused, I acknowledge my own responsibility in creating the situation. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, but it was a recognition of truth, something our family had avoided for generations. As the 1-year anniversary of my move approached, I hosted a small dinner party in my apartment. Aunt Patricia was there, of course, along with Natalie, the twins, and Alicia. We ate good food, shared stories that carefully sidestepped the most painful parts of our history, and tentatively explored what our relationships might become. As we gathered around my dining table, my actual dining table, not the borrowed conference table of my deception, I looked at the faces of those who had chosen to remain in my life. They saw me now not as a source of financial opportunity, but as a person with value beyond what I could provide. The visibility I had craved came not from dramatic revelations, but from the slow, steady work of building authentic connections. To family, Patricia proposed a toast. The ones we're born with and the ones we choose. To visibility, I added. To seeing and being seen. Later, after everyone had left and Patricia had returned to her own apartment downstairs, I stood at my window overlooking the river. The lights of the city reflected on the water, creating an illusion of stars fallen to earth. I thought about the lessons of the past year, the pain of invisibility, the hollow victory of revenge, the freedom of self-acceptance, the power of chosen family over blood ties. I had moved away to see if anyone would notice I was gone. Instead, I discovered who I was when I stopped waiting to be seen. What about you? Have you ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most clearly? Have you experienced the conditional love that only appears when you have something to offer? Share your experiences in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. This journey has taught me that true visibility comes from authentic connections. I'd love to hear your thoughts and build that connection with you. Thank you for being here, and remember, sometimes the most important person to be seen by is yourself.